Malice in the Palace. So we discussed the Netflix documentary recapping the 2004 brawl between the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons. All that and more coming up. Also, Shikari Richardson back in action this weekend, but will she have her work cut out for her? She's set to face all three 100-meter Olympians from Jamaica. We discussed that and more coming up right here on Fourth and Justus. Welcome to Fourth and Just Us, everyone, where we have the conversation where we intersect race, sports, and politics. I'm Larisha Harris alongside Kevin A.D. Anderson and Dr. Leonard Moore, and we are excited to have you back with us for another week and another show full of amazing topics. We want to let you know that the views on the show are strictly our own. They do not represent any other entity, any other person. The views on the show are strictly our own.
The views of Kevin B. Anderson do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense, the Department of the Air Force, or the U.S. government, or his wife and his children.
We also want to remind you, the viewers, our audience who we love so much, to make sure that you like us on Facebook. Also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. And remember, throughout the show, you can comment and leave your remarks or questions, and we'll get to them whenever we can. We just appreciate you all for watching, and we hope that you like and subscribe to our show. So a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. Like we said, Malice in the Palace. Netflix released a documentary recapping the 2004 melee between the Indiana Pacers and the then champions, the champions at that time, the Detroit Pistons. That brawl took place at the Palace in Auburn Hills, Michigan, and it left 9 people injured. Your initial thoughts, Kevin, after watching this Netflix documentary?
Well, there's a lot of things that are involved in this. And one, the fans throwing water bottles and soda and whatever else at the players, which is totally out of line. And so, the Pistons did not do a good job of having security and trying to prevent that. Having the players go up in the stands. And we grow up on the playground and whatever. And, that kind of activity is unacceptable. Now, it doesn't make it right for them doing it, but, to be surprised that something like that would happen isn't surprising, really.
Doc?
Well, as y'all know, I'm a history professor, and we always say that journalists write the first draft of history. And I knew the minute I saw it, I'm like, man, those fans started this whole thing. But what happens when you have a overwhelmingly white journalism corps that identifies more with the fan than the athlete? What happens is you get this narrative that's spent that these black athletes went crazy attacking people in the stands. I mean, I remember when LeGarrette Blount, who played running back at Oregon, when he hit that white player who came up behind him. But the media always takes the side of the fan, and we have to be honest with ourselves. There is I think America has a love-hate relationship with their black athletes. I've never understood why it's acceptable for people to go to a game, sit courtside, and just cuss people out all day. I mean, I couldn't go to anybody else's area of employment and just sit there and verbally abuse them. And what amazed me about the documentary was how it appears that this has affected Jermaine O'Neal, and the event was 17 years ago. That brother is really hurt by that. And so sometimes we don't realize just the impact these events have on some of the people who are involved, and it wasn't his fault.
For sure. I got to agree with you, Doc. Excuse me. But I was taken aback a little bit by the narrative that was created that you saw from this Netflix documentary. At one point, I had to ask, okay, well, who was going to have the side of the athletes? Because I think it's well known that they understood, what happened on the court they really weren't going to fight because, you know, they're friends, and, you know, that sort of thing happens from time to time, correct? But looking at all aspects of the video that was shown in this Netflix documentary, it was clearly obvious that this entire brawl was started, like you said, from the fans. It started when you saw in slow motion that beer bottle come down and hit Metta World Peace in the face. And so it's like, at that point, do you expect him just not to retaliate, already knowing the type of person that he was at that time? Right. And so I think for me, that was where I saw the issue, is no one had the backs of the athletes. It felt like no one understood them, which, like you said, it showed that it definitely affected them, especially Jermaine O'Neal. And I think that showed going forward, too, in the years to come, because it seemed as if his career was the one that was sort of left on the back burner, in essence, because Metta World Peace went on to go win a championship with another team. Jackson also went on and continued to progress with San Antonio when he went over there. But what happened to O'Neal? You know, he was the only person that took it to the criminal level and actually was able to reduce his suspension. And it seemed like the system that actually does not have the backs of many African Americans, which is the criminal system, actually was the one that supported them, in essence, in this particular documentary.
Right. And that is a great point. We don't even talk about Jermaine O'Neal's career anymore. Mm-hmm. He's forever associated with this one incident. You know what I mean? So imagine your entire body of work as an athlete, you know, going straight from high school to the pros. Nobody talks about that anymore. And just imagine how, when he sees people at a restaurant or whatever, I bet you they bring up the Malice in the Palace almost every time he has an interaction with somebody he doesn't know.
Yeah. But there's another component of this that they tried to downplay, was a gentleman who threw the water bottle, and he acted like, you know, it wasn't any big deal, and that, you know, he was innocent of all of this. And so the media in the documentary almost felt sorry for him and presented it that way, which he was the one who instigated all this, and he didn't even get beat up. He ran, he was a coward, and he let that young kid get beat up that didn't throw or do anything. So, you know, there's a lot of components in this that just don't mesh, and that we allow this to happen because, Doc, I'm going to go back to what you said. The things that are yelled at and talked to with these players is unacceptable. It goes on beyond the cursing. It's the racial stuff and everything else. And so, you know, we need to do a better job of policing that, making sure that it doesn't happen. Because for us to think that people aren't going to react with some of the things that they're called, I mean, you got to be kidding me.
That's right. Yeah.
But I also want to pinpoint, too, that at that time when this incident took place, there weren't police or security guards really in sight. Like, if you look at the video and the way they break it down in the Netflix documentary itself, they speak on that there were no police officers to be seen really when this incident was happening. Really no security to kind of hold off the fans or anything like that. But I can say that now, in current times today, I don't see that happening, because going to various NBA games, you have security guards everywhere. Even those who are affiliated with the arena, the ushers or whatever, they are trained to react or to respond to certain incidences that take place in the arena. And that's actually a part of the current NBA fan code of conduct now, that the arena staff are trained for certain incidents. So I think that was one thing that, you know, had to be unfortunately established after this incident that took place. It shouldn't have happened, but now that it happened, we know that hopefully it won't happen again at all. But moving on now to another aspect, another topic we want to discuss here, the WNBPA. They have a first of its kind partnership with Amalgamated Bank. They are now the official social responsibility partner with the WNBPA. Now, this partnership came together, and what they're going to do is promote social justice reform, specifically in areas of racial and gender equity and voting rights. Again, this was initiated by amalgamated bank. And it's important to note that because many of the women's sports are rarely targeted by companies. So for this to happen and for them to be the ones to initiate this partnership speaks volumes, and it says a lot. I want to also make sure that it's clear and known that with this partnership, a fund, a social impact fund, will be established, and that fund will directly support 5 organizations, including the National Council of Negro Women, Black Voters Matter, the New Georgia Project, and Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund. That's just a few of the organizations. Again, there are a total of 5. But when this came out, right, you guys, and you heard about this partnership, the first of its kind, like I said, what impact are you hoping this particular partnership will have on the sports community and on the WNBA in general? Doc?
I'm hoping it'll have significant impact. And it seems as if some of these grants are going to, local grassroots organizations, which is fantastic. But I have a different approach, and one I've been trying to sell. We have 2 longstanding civil rights organizations in the Black community, the NAACP and the Urban League. There's an NAACP chapter in every city. There's an Urban League chapter in nearly every major American city. And so while I think this is a good first step, what Amalgamated Bank is doing is not scalable. And so I would like to see something where one of these banks or something partners with the Urban League or the NAACP, and they say, wherever you all have a chapter, we will put this initiative in place. And so that's what I've been trying to sell. I tried to sell some of my former WNBA, some of my former students who played in the WNBA on getting with Mark Morial and the Urban League. Because the Urban League does a phenomenal job, housing, education, job training. The Urban League is not political. And the NAACP, we know their track record. I just think sometimes we want to go create a new organization or a new structure when we've had structures in place for more than a century that have proven to work.
AD?
Well, I like to applaud the union, the leadership of the union, and the bank for putting this together and having something that has a strategy in place and that can move into the community. And I agree with Doc that, looking at other organizations that they can involve. But my primary shout out is that they have looked at this and strategically moved forward with this key partnership, and they're actually doing something. It's commendable what they've been able to do so far, and to see how this will be carried out.
For sure. And again, I want to mention that this bank, Amalgamated Bank, is the one that actually initiated this partnership, and their mission, or rather what they're known as, is America's Social Responsibility Bank. And they have been a mission-driven institution that for 98 years has used deposited dollars towards businesses that address issues of social, racial, environmental, and economic justice. And I think this also speaks volumes to what the WNBA, what they have done in the past year, and in other recent situations as well, how they have been the leader of social justice issues and putting those statements out in the forefront. And again, I think it's commendable that we can say that they have been the leaders of this as it pertains to the sports and athletics world, because that's what we saw from them. We saw them,
Absolutely.
Put forth these initiatives, put forth these stances, and they did not back down from it whatsoever.
Right.
So I commend them for doing that, and then having this opportunity presented, to them to be able to continue those efforts is definitely something to be proud of, for sure. For sure. Moving on now to an exciting race that I think a lot of people are going to be looking forward to. Shikari Richardson. She's back in action. The Prefontaine Classic is happening in Oregon this weekend. But the question is, though, guys, will she have her work cut out for her? She is going up against the 3 Olympians from the 100-meter women's race, all from Jamaica. Will she have her work cut out for her? AD?
Definitely. But, I think she'll be up to it because she has something to prove. Plus, she won up there in Oregon in the first place. So I think that, she will have a great chance of defending her title as being one of the people that can beat the Jamaicans.
Yeah, she got a work cut out for her. And I don't think, however, I don't think we need to judge her based upon how she does in this one race. You know what I mean? I mean, she's 22. Those Jamaicans not playing around. And I'm just glad she's getting back in the mix. My biggest issue is with American track and field. Why do they have these track meets in the middle of nowhere? Why is the NCAA championship track meet up in Oregon? Nobody can go. And I just think that USA track and field needs a visionary leader, because more people would watch track, Larissa and Kevin, if it was actually on TV. You can't even find this stuff. You know what I mean? And so it seems like we only get excited about track every 4 years when the Olympics come around. And it was unfortunate that she wasn't able to participate. But I would like to see some of these meets be held in Dallas and Atlanta and other places where people can actually attend. Nobody is going to cold, rainy Oregon up there to watch a track meet. I'm sorry, only track enthusiasts. So it'll be a fun race, but she got her work cut out for her.
Now, I must say, I don't think that she is going to do well this weekend.
Okay.
I do not. And it's nothing against her, because I really do like her. I fell in love with her the same way so many other people did. Her vivacious personality, her boldness, everything that represents her and who she is. I fell in love with it just like everybody else did during this time. But watching the techniques of these three women who captured this gold, silver, and bronze medal at the Olympics, and watching the technique of Shikari Richardson, there's a difference there. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that she can't, that she couldn't come out, and possibly make a statement or make a stance. Heck, even snag a second place. I just don't see her winning this race, actually, because you have to remember, she is going up against the young lady, Elaine, who snapped Flojo's record. And she was impeccable coming out the gate during that race when she had that record. So it's going to be interesting to see, how she's been training, how she's been preparing, what she might have fixed, during this time that she had off, even though she wasn't able to actually physically be a part of the Olympics. What was she able to do? And I think that's what a lot of people are going to be looking at and watching for, those who will be watching this race, because there will be a lot of eyes on it just because it's Shikari Richardson and the stance and statement that she made because of her unfortunate incident. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how she comes out in this race.
And
so
I'm
Larissa,
hoping
what
that
you're saying is the Jamaicans are no joke. They own the sprints now. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be a challenge for her. But, she's, I believe, with everything that happened to her, she's motivated as well. So we'll definitely see. Hey, Doc, one thing I want to go back to you. They have spent millions and millions of dollars on that complex in Oregon just to have these meets. So to get it to be moved around, you're going to have to fight Nike and that money.
Here's what I'm hoping with Shikari, and I'm speaking as a father now.
Yeah.
I think when we have young people in our community or in our family who come into instant fame and wealth kind of instantly, and I'm not saying this with her family, I'm just speaking in general, we shouldn't just turn them loose. You know what I mean? I remember when Jerome Bettis got drafted, I think he won Rookie of the Year, and he told his parents he was going to hang out in LA for the summer. St. Louis, her team was with. They said, no, Negro, you coming back to Detroit. And Jerome Bettis talks about in his book how, like, that first summer after his NFL year, he was sleeping back in his childhood bedroom. And what his dad said was, I know you're a professional football player. He said, but you are still my son and you are still young. So I'm just hoping Shikari has a good group of a team around her, and that we don't just turn her off to just turn her to the wolves. No, she needs mentoring, and, she needs people to affirm her and love her, and just to make sure she stays on the right path.
Agreed. Again, we wish her the best of luck this weekend. All eyes will be on that Prefontaine Classic that's happening this weekend. So I'm pretty sure she's going to make a statement this weekend. So look out for that. Moving on to the NFL now. We have to talk about it because we've been talking about this particular situation for the past couple of shows as it pertains to COVID-19 and the vaccinations. Well, the Falcons are believed to be the first NFL team to be 100% vaccinated. This came out this week that the team, again, 100% rate. No other team has that particular stance right now. Just your initial thoughts, Doc, when you heard about it.
I'm excited. I'm very excited. I think we talked briefly last week about, we have two groups of anti-vaxxers. You have the Trump people in one camp, and then you have woke black folk in another camp. You know what I mean? And it's crazy that they agree on this issue. There's something called the horseshoe theory or the horseshoe diagram. Don't worry about it. It would be too complicated for me to explain. But you have these two extremes, but they appear to be together on this one issue. And the fact that, it's associated that not getting the vaccine is associated with being woke is problematic. And so what I'm hopeful, Larisha, Atlanta, like I said, they're 100% vaccinated. Hopefully the black folk in Atlanta will see that in many ways, right? And it will motivate them to go get vaccinated.
AD, before you hop in here, I want to ask you this question, being that you are a person who's in that specific type of role, like the business aspect of the game, right? Do you think this 100% vaccination has anything to do with the fact that a memo was sent out and Commissioner Roger Goodell said that games would no longer be rescheduled and that teams responsible for cancellation would receive a loss on their record and players on both teams would not be paid? Do you think this vaccination has anything to do with that specific memo?
Show me the money.
Right.
Show me the money. Hey, Doc, I know I'm not intellectually enough to understand some of the things you're going to say, but I think our viewership probably would be able to understand it. So maybe you'll take some time to explain it to them. It's a good message to be sent out. But unfortunately, and we've been talking about this, we've been talking about this for a long time now. And so finally, we're recognizing and we're applauding this team for doing it. But every team should be 100%, and it should have been done a long time ago. So I applaud them for being 100%. But, for it to take this long, and we're only talking about one team, that's discouraging right there.
Right.
And we're talking about grown folk, and we're talking about people who, say they have compassion for their teammates and everything else. Well, if they truly did, we would all get vaccinated. And if we had to wear a mask, we wear masks. So we protect one another. And that's what it's all about. It's not about, giving in to something or believing in something. It's about trying to take care of your fellow man. And, that's a simple message. It's not going to be the intellectual message that Doc's sending, but it's pretty simple, and most people should understand that.
You would hope we understand it, but who knows?
Well, hopefully we'll see more of the NFL teams make it to this specific rank. Hopefully they'll make it to the 100% vaccination rate. But we do know that there are, let me get this right. There's a stat, right? It's all 32 NFL teams have a vaccination rate above 75%. That's including 15 teams that have a rate of over 95%. So it's slowly getting there. It's slowly happening. Hopefully we'll continue to see more teams sort of reach this milestone here.
Larisha, let me say this. I think the high profile athletes, they have a responsibility to get vaccinated and to tell people, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I tell people, when you are a community leader, when you have been put on that pedestal, sometimes you have to make decisions that are for the greater good of the community. And I think every African-American person who's ever been in any kind of position of leadership, sometimes there is in many ways a conflict between what you want personally and what is best for the greater good of the community. So I just want them to understand, man, we have to do what's best for the greater good of the community some of the time. And it can't be all about what I want and my personal freedom and my personal agenda. I just wanted to throw that out there. That may be unpopular, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, but Doc, just because they're professional athletes and they're there doesn't mean they're a role model and that they're going to take on this responsibility. So, for us to think that's not going to happen, because if you go into those locker rooms, you do see those few people that lead and everybody else is following. And those good teams have great leadership in the locker room, and some of those other teams have no leadership in the locker room. The thing is, though, Larissa, and I go back to what you initially asked me. It will take a team to forfeit a game and lose that money for everybody to get vaccinated. Once that happens and they see that this is real, then, we all fall in, and there's a lot of sheep out there. But until that happens, I think we're still going to be chasing that number of trying to get everybody vaccinated.
Yeah.
It's almost like an incentive in essence, right?
Yes.
Would you agree? Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, nobody wants their money to be messed with. So you're right, AD. We might see it for real. It definitely might happen if it doesn't happen before the start of the season. But since we're talking about the season, let's talk about preseason and some of these new rookie quarterbacks that we have now seen since preseason action has taken place. We know that there were 10 quarterbacks selected in the 2021 NFL Draft. Now, all of them made their professional debuts during week 1 of preseason. More than half of them played well. But I want us to kind of focus on the 5 that came out of the first round, right? Because there were lots and lots of conversation around these 5 guys that came out of the first round of the draft pick. So after watching the preseason debuts of some of these players, such as Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, AD, what were your thoughts about them, and what impressed you the most about some of these rookie QBs?
Well, you can't believe the hype. And so they were all playing against second team players or players who were trying to make the team. So you can't judge there. But, the thing is that from the beginning, Justin Fields has always shown that he's probably the best athlete out of all of them, the best quarterback. So, I think that we need more time to see this. But I will say this. Watching Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, I think that he's going to have a difficult time, because if he doesn't have anybody blocking for him, I don't care how good he is, he's not going to survive in the NFL. So it was interesting to see Urban Meyers on the sideline as well, and how long he's going to be able to take this, because unless I'm missing something, I think they're going to struggle this year, because he just doesn't have the people he had at Ohio State and Florida.
Right. When Chicago drafted Justin Fields, Larissa, your Atlanta homeboy, my fellow Ohio State Buckeye, the Bears instantly became my second favorite team, And so I'm watching the Bears preseason game the other day, and it amazes me, Kev and Larissa, that no matter what this brother does, they always find something to critique. A play would break down. He would run 15 yards to a first down. Play would break down. He would roll out, find a receiver. And what they say is, yeah, well, he has great athletic ability, but you can't really count on that. And I'm just like, if you contrast that with the way they talk about Taysom Hill, a gimmick quarterback, and people, they were trying to sell us that Taysom Hill could be a 17 game starting quarterback in the NFL. And I just want to know, what has Justin Fields done to people to get all this hate? I have a theory. I could be wrong. And my theory, I'll leave it at that. I don't know what he's done to endure or get all this hate from folk. My theory.
Come on,
go ahead.
You got to say your theory. No, you got to. Yeah, you got to say that.
My theory is that the white media does not like what Justin Fields represents, because he doesn't fit the stereotypical high-profile black athlete. Well, I never knew my daddy. If it wasn't for sports, I would be dead or in jail. Me and my mama struggled my whole life. I think the white media and white America, they like that narrative because it shows that, hey, we have created this awesome opportunity for you, and without us, you wouldn't have it. Justin Fields, his parents been tight. I remember watching draft day. All these other people had 40, 50 people at their house. Justin Fields, it was him, his sister, his parents, and his grandparents, and his agent. And I just think that they don't like that image that in many ways he promotes.
Well, one thing, they're going to have to deal with him, because every indication he will be successful. And so once he really has success, that image and how they treat and talk about him will be different. Trust me on that. It's too early to judge any of these people. But I mean, the people that were chosen before Justin, and if they don't have it, they're going to have that conversation about, well, just look how they made a mistake. And quite frankly, some of those people who did not pick him probably won't have jobs in the next couple of years.
Let me throw this in.
Okay.
If you think about Fields with the Bears, other brother got picked up by the Packers last year, and I think Lance with the 49ers, right? Mm-hmm. Those are three pressure packed franchises where they bring a lot of attention. It ain't no pressure on Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. That's a expansion franchise, been around 20 years. Do you know what kind of pressure is on Justin Fields in working class Chicago? Tons of pressure, but I think he's built for it.
Okay, so with that being said, right, how would you rank like I said, the first five, the 5 QBs that were drafted in the first round? How would you rank them based upon their performance in week 1 action of preseason?
Wilson should have never been drafted.
Whoa.
I'm sorry. This is ridiculous. Should have never been drafted.
So I take it Wilson is your number 5 on your list from that statement.
Yeah, I mean, you know, where was Mac Jones drafted? Where was he drafted at? Was he one of the 5 too?
Yes, Mac Jones was one of the 5. So the 5 include Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. How would you rank those rookie QBs?
I'm going Fields 1, Lance 2, Lawrence 3, and Mac Jones 4, and Wilson 5.
Okay. AD?
Justin Fields 1. And, you know, I think that to Trevor Lawrence, those two probably 1A and 1B. The other person, though, that I've been impressed with and that I saw through training camp and now playing that first game is the Jones kid from Alabama. I think that playing with New England and what his skill set is and how the Patriots play, I think he'll have some success. And, you know, why I judge that on what I'm saying is that because Cam Newton has been very positive and the feedback that he's given him, I think has been impressive as well, because I know Cam has no reason to say, you know, anything positive about this kid unless he means it. And so, you know, he's been very high on him. And so I go with that as well.
Okay, mine would be Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones. And this is why I say that. Right? Justin Fields, sharp throws, smart decisions, speedy when necessary, right? I mean, of course, we still have to see more from him. Again, it's only preseason, but the maturity and the leadership that he has displayed thus far, I think speaks volumes to who he is as a person and as a player. So for me, that stands out, right? That's why I have Justin Fields at the top. I have Trevor Lawrence second because I've seen him from covering college football. So I know his abilities. I know his capabilities. But I also do understand that right now he is in a tough situation with the Jaguars. Even though the Jaguars are my team, this is a tough situation for him because this is a conservative type of playbook, right? But not only is it a conservative type of playbook, it is also an area where he does not have protection.
Right.
And you mentioned it, AD. He does not have protection right now, which is what he is not accustomed to at all coming from Clemson. He is not accustomed to not having anybody there to, in the forefront, make sure he has that time in the pocket to get things done. And so we did see him take a huge inside sack on the first snap against the Browns, which is not good at all. But regardless, because I know his capabilities and because I've seen him throughout his college football career, I think he's going to actually transition well in the league despite his current predicament now.
But let me say this, and Kevin alluded to it. He has a head coach who's operating way outside of his depth. You know, Urban Meyer hasn't been there a year. I mean, look at all the mishaps Urban Meyer had. Why do you bring Tim Tebow to camp? Why don't you just hire him to be your chaplain? You know what I mean? Why are you bringing him to camp? And then he tried to hire the strength coach from Iowa who had all those allegations of being a racist following him, and then breaking some rules, some NFL rules in terms of, player participation off season. Urban Meyer's out of his depth. And, somebody said it best, Urban Meyer and Nick Saban around college football people, they can walk around, stretch their chest out. But when Saban went to the NFL, it ain't that easy, brother. And Urban Meyer also, he's realized it ain't that easy. So whenever Urban Meyer is in the presence of NFL head coaches, they will tell him, brother, please go sit down in the corner and be quiet.
Oh, wow.
Hey, Doc, did you say, I think that strength coach is still working with them, if I'm not
No,
mistaken.
they cut him. They fired him.
He's not there.
Well, he might have been fired from that position, but talk out on the street is he's still connected with them.
Wow.
I don't know. I can't say if that's true or not true, but that's what I've heard. But the one thing I want to go back and talk about too is, so the three, Mac Jones, Fields, and Trevor Lawrence, the thing is that they come from programs that have won, and they've won big. And so that's a component that we don't talk about too. And I think that's going to be big in what they do and how they carry themselves. And we'll go back to Trevor, where he isn't used to playing on teams that have not been successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's going to be a difficult task for him because, what we saw the other day, like you said, Larissa, and we talked about, up front is where you win the games in the NFL. And
in the trenches.
Up front, you can't be good anywhere else.
But these folks, they always overrate these white quarterbacks. Guess who got cut yesterday? Josh Rosen. Remember when him and Sam Darnold came out? They were seen as the darlings. Sam Darnold a bust. Josh Rosen is a bust. They always overrate these quarterbacks, And in my mind, they always underrate the black quarterbacks. As I felt from day one, Justin Fields should have been the top pick in the draft.
Well, we shall see what takes place and what happens as we continue on. I'm excited for the season. I'm excited to see what all of these quarterbacks that we mentioned are going to do. We gave our rankings, and we're going to see if our rankings hold true throughout the season. So remember this moment, guys, because we will come back to it, okay? But another quarterback situation we got to talk about really quickly. Jameis Winston versus Taysom Hill. The Saints. Who is going to be the person to replace Drew Brees? That's the question I think that everybody is wondering right now. We know that the head coach, Sean Payton, has been non-committal and calculated as to how to handle this massive decision, because it is a massive decision, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious as to how you all feel about this particular quarterback scenario or matchup that we're seeing right now between, again, Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. AD?
Neither one are going to replace Drew Brees. I just, New Orleans probably will struggle this year. And then they'll draft a quarterback next year or trade for one. And there's going to be some people out there that they could trade for. But I just think on looking at the history of both of these young men, I just don't know if they can lead New Orleans to the kind of team they have proven to be in the past. So I'll take a pass on that, and I don't think either one of them are going to be able to fill the shoes that Drew Brees, how he played for the Saints for all those years.
Of course, nobody can fill Drew Brees' shoes. It's right, Drew Brees.
Right. Well, now I won't say Drew Brees he's not the best that's ever played. So he was good for New Orleans, and he did break those records, but that team was very good. But if you compare him to a lot of other quarterbacks, I don't think there is that comparison. He's a winner, though. I'll say this. He's a winner, and he led that team. And, again, he had some mishaps, and he said some things, and he lost some of his players in the locker room for a while. So, we need to take that into account as well.
I think I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of the Saints and what he was able to do for that particular organization, right? Whoever steps in behind him will have some big shoes to fill, because when he was there, he got the job done, right? And so I think for me, that's sort of what I'm looking at. I'm not comparing him to any other quarterbacks right now, because there are several other quarterbacks who, of course, rank higher than him.
Well, I'll give you one example, though, of somebody who's been able to do that. So when Joe Montana left Steve Young stepped right in and was successful and won Super Bowls right after Joe Montana. So there are examples of teams and players that have done that.
Yeah.
In this situation, I don't think it's going to happen.
Let me say this about Jameis. If y'all ever are bored or having a bad day, go on YouTube and look at some of his workout videos. It will brighten your day. You will crack up laughing. I'm a big Jameis Winston fan, and I think this year will witness the resurrection of Jameis Winston. People talk about, Kev, all the interceptions he threw with Tampa Bay the year before last, but that brother also threw a whole lot of touchdowns. He got a big arm, and I'm just hoping that the system in New Orleans will be a lot better for him than Bruce Arians' system in Tampa Bay. That's Jameis Winston's job. I don't see how the head coach of New Orleans could roll Taysom Hill out and be taken seriously by any opposing NFL defensive coordinator. Jameis will be the starter. He's going to throw 2 or 3 picks a game, but hopefully he can throw about 3-4 touchdowns a game too.
Hey, I will tell you this.
He's going to throw some picks.
Hey, he was a baseball player too. I was down in Florida State and saw him play. He made a catch at the wall in right field and threw someone who was tagging up from the wall in right field to hide home. So he has a hell of an arm and a great baseball player as well. Very, very athletic.
I love his personality. He reminds me just of a good old country brother, doesn't take himself too seriously. I get the impression he hang out with the same folk he's been hanging out with since high school. And he's just a likable. I know he has some issues at Florida State, but he's just, to me, a likable young man.
Well, he has fun.
The part that I thought was hilarious was how he has been making fun of him of himself, right? Saying, well, at one point I did know how to play good football and I'm getting back to it. So when I heard him say that, like in an interview, you said, he didn't take himself too seriously. Like he understood, what he did while he was in Tampa and unfortunately having that large number of interceptions, et cetera. But for him to be able to hone it, own it, and take it in, and now he's working to make it better. I think that's commendable for him to do that and know not to take himself too seriously and try to focus on the good that can come out of this. So I don't know who's going to be the quarterback. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think it would be a bad idea to try to utilize both of them in different scenarios or in different ways, depending on what team you're facing and the schemes that might be thrown your way. It could be useful to utilize both of them. I don't know. We shall see. But obviously, AD, you don't think either one of them are suitable for the position. And Doc, you're going with Jameis Winston. So
the resurrection of Jameis Winston. That's it. That's what we're going to call
it. So we shall see the direction that Sean Payton goes in as it pertains to who will be the starting quarterback for the Saints. Want to quickly move into this topic of discussion, and I know with this one we could go for days talking about it, but we have to talk about it because we've seen so many incidents take place as it pertains to college athletes and their head coaches. And what sparked us to want to ask this question, the question of who's responsible for protecting college athletes from toxic behavior of coaches, all of this started when we heard about the situation that took place in Syracuse when the women's basketball head coach, Quentin Hillsman, resigned from his position as the head coach again of the women's basketball team following allegations from players and staff of unwanted physical contact, threats, and bullying, right? So the question again, and we're posing it to our audience, and I'm also posing it to the other two panelists here, AD and Doc, who's responsible for protecting these college athletes from the toxic behaviors of coaches?
The athletic director.
Okay.
Kevin, Larisha, quick example. I take kids abroad every summer before COVID hit. I've taken about 430 kids abroad, mostly black and brown, to China and South Africa. Now, let me ask you a question. If there's a whole bunch of harassment, if one of my staff members is on those trips harassing young women and just berating them and using all this kind of stuff, I'm going to be held accountable. So I'm trying to figure out how come when these coaches get in trouble, the athletic director in many ways is never held accountable. Athletic directors know what goes on in their programs. A lot of times they don't want to know what's going on. But let me say this. You should know what's going on. And if you don't know what's going on, that gives me even more of a reason to fire you. But I think you got these athletic directors, and now we've had all these cases, Kevin, in women's basketball, and most of these large D1 programs have a senior women's administrator. These senior women's administrators are complicit in the treatment and how these women, particularly women basketball players and soccer players and softball players, are being treated by these coaches. And it's tragic because so many women have fought for women to get the opportunity to play at a high level. And now you get it? And you're going to tolerate coaches disrespecting young women? No, I don't like that. So I think athletic directors, senior women's administrators, particularly for these cases of women basketball, they all need to go.
Doc, it goes beyond that. It starts with the president and the leadership of the university setting the tone. And once that comes to place and where they have heard things that aren't right, they need to start inspecting what they expect. But you're right, too. The athletic director needs to be responsible for it. And, if you're doing your job and if you're walking amongst the troops and you're doing what you should be doing, you should hear and see that thing or whatever is happening happen and address it. The one thing that happened to me at Maryland is that I held people accountable. And there were a lot of people that didn't want to be held accountable. They wanted other people to be held accountable, but I held them accountable. And at the end, they felt their job was threatened and everything else. And so they didn't like that. But I mean, that's when you sign up for the job, that's part of what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to protect these young people. And all the time when we sit down with parents and we're recruiting them, we talk about family and we talk about this, that, and other. I want you to treat my kid like it's your kid. And if you can't do that or you're not willing to do that, then, my kid isn't going to go to your school.
And here's what I tell parents: don't get caught up into the logo that's recruiting your son or daughter. Don't get caught up into that. You got to ask yourself, can I really trust my child with this person? And I've been in the game 23 years. Most head coaches I know are completely dysfunctional. They don't have any outside interests, spend very little time with their own kids, and it's all about the job, because they fear, getting fired and going down a level of competition. And so parents need to really think twice, where am I sending my kid? And here's the question. If you are sending your kid to a program where they've had a large number of transfers, you don't have to ask the coach, well, why are people transferring? No, they're transferring because they don't like the coach. And you would be a fool to send your kid into that environment. And I don't give a damn what school what logo is on that coach's chest.
So how do we get rid of the dysfunctional coaches? Like how do we avoid that? How do we make coaches not be or categorized as dysfunctional?
Well, first of all, it takes courage to address those coaches that have those problems. And then if we look at it, these coaches that are making a lot of money, they're dictating what's going on to the program and not the athletic director. I mean, a lot of these athletic directors are working for the football and the basketball coach. Let's be honest about that. So when you have that kind of system, you're bound to have these kind of things happening, and that, until it arises and it becomes public or it becomes an issue, it's not addressed. A lot of people want to just turn a blind eye to these things. Unfortunately, and I'm going to say this, there's a lot of people in these positions now that are in them because of power, status, and money. It has nothing to do with the kids. And, some of them don't even have a relationship with the kids, which is very sad. And so, but that's where this business is turned. And, it's not focused on the student athlete. It's focused on everything around it. And how much more money can we make? How can I go out and get somebody to give more money to it? And kids are secondary. I can't tell you how many meetings that I've sat in and that you don't even hear the kids mentioned. So that's where we are with this. And until we go back and, if we can, address it and take care of these student athletes, it's not going to happen. But Doc will say one thing, and I hope you will expand on this, that the student athletes that we're working with today are much smarter and are much more vocal and will come out and have much more information, and they will come out and they'll make you be right.
That's right. And we've seen this student athlete empowerment movement take place over the last couple of years, but we got one last phase to hit. Man, my camera went out for some reason. Man, my bad. I don't know if y'all can hear me. My camera went out. But anyway, here's the phase. All right. We can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Here's we're gonna roll it. The last phase is student athletes have to start speaking out when they have a bad situation. They can't be afraid to tell a recruit, this may not be the best place for you. Mm-hmm. And let me get my camera back on.
Hey, Doc, well, that's something that you just said that is very valid now. And here's what's going to happen. With this transfer and this transfer portal, now they have an opportunity where if they do speak up, they'll have another opportunity to go somewhere else, where in the past, that was limited and, they were probably afraid to say anything. So that's going to be a game changer in itself.
So with it being that there is this move by a lot of the student athletes to make their voices heard and to be recognized for what they're speaking and saying, why don't we see a lot of the others in these leadership roles, athletic directors, presidents, etc., take the initiative to hear more from the student athletes and maybe find coaches that can actually fit into the mold of what the students are saying and then what the institution itself should actually be representing?
Well, I'll give you an example. So I had a thing at Maryland where we called it Kicking It with Kevin. Mm-hmm. And I invited the athletes in, nobody else but me and the athletes. And it was about, I wanted to hear what was on their mind. It wasn't about sports. It was about everything else. So it was written in the Washington Post about what we were doing and everything. So one of my colleagues, and I like him, very nice man, he came up to me and he talked to me about what I was doing. And so I told him this, and he said, well, I'm a 45-year-old white man. I have nothing to talk about with these kids. And I mean, like, you're in this position. And what my whole thing was, it's not about talking to them, it's talking with them and listening. And that was a key thing, listening. And I wanted to know what was on their minds.
Understood.
I don't even, my perspective, what I've seen is that, many athletic directors and coaches and fans and donors believe that the university is doing these kids a favor, by giving them a scholarship. And I meet with these coaches and I'd be like, how many of y'all have ever told a kid it's a privilege for you to be here? All the coaches raised their hand. I say, how is it a privilege for a kid to be here when you recruited the kid? I said, damn, y'all just giving out scholarships for the hell of it? No, you brought the kid here because they can impact your bottom line, which is winning games. And this is what I was talking about, this idea of these kids are poor, they don't have daddies, this is their way out. People really buy into that and they say it's a privilege. No, I told all the coaches at a Pac-12 school, it is not a privilege for the kid to be here. It's a privilege for you to coach here. I can guarantee you a kid at that Pac-12 school who was swimming, playing basketball or playing football or softball, they could go get another Pac-12 scholarship. They could transfer. I said, can you guarantee that if you got fired today, you get another Power 5 job? They all went quiet. I said, so it's a privilege for you to be here and you need to thank the kids for coming to play for you.
Interesting. Now we could continue going on and on with this topic, but we are running out of time, guys, and we want to make sure that you have an opportunity for your final thoughts. So we can always, like I said, continue this conversation another show, and I'm pretty sure that our listeners, our audience are enjoying the conversation, but want to leave you some room to be able to express your final thoughts, share whatever's on your mind right now as we prepare to wrap the show. So AD, let's start with you. What's on your mind?
For all the folks in Maryland, I want you to go out and vote for Wes Moore for governor. There's no better leader. There's no better person to take where Maryland is now and move it forward. So vote for Wes Moore.
Doc?
Well, two things. Number one, my kids went to school today for the first time since March 9th of 2020. Help me, Holy Ghost. Amen. I got my house.
Amen.
I got the house to myself. And I think my wife's going to work tomorrow. Number two, I want to give a shout out to the people from Paris, Texas. So Paris ISD. So that means the Paris Independent School District. They did something brilliant yesterday. Now, these are country white folks, all Trump supporters, Northeast Texas. You know, our governor in Texas here has basically signed an executive order prohibiting schools from implementing a mask mandate. They have a brilliant attorney. They went through the Texas Education Code and found out that local school districts have the authority to implement dress codes. So what they did, they didn't implement a mask requirement. They just said wearing a mask now is a part of the school dress code, and there is nothing the governor can do about it. And again, these are country white folk up in Northeast Texas. So I want to give a shout out to Paris ISD for finding the loophole. And I've been told this morning that other school districts around the state are going to use that same loophole. So props to them.
And as for me, I just want to shout out the photographer for my gender reveal, Miss Yolanda Richardson. She gave me my photos back from my gender reveal, and I absolutely love them. Every picture that showcased the reaction of myself, my boyfriend, and my family. It was absolutely beautiful. Again, I'm having a little boy and a little girl, and so I posted those pictures on my social media if you want to check them out. They are gorgeous, and I love them. So thank you, Fuzzy Rabbit Photos. Thank you so much. And thank you to the audience for listening and tuning in for another episode today. We'll be back next week, same place, same time, with more hot topics and more hot takes for you to enjoy. So make sure you come back and watch us wherever you are watching us on Facebook. Go ahead and click that like button. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to us as well. And we always love to see your comments and hear your questions. So thank you, and we'll see you again next week. Have a great day, guys.